when Raymond said, or somebody said that, instead of doing Mary and Martha, I will do who? Stephen? No, I didn't want to come here and be stoned by all of you. I could have done that, but I preferred trying to be the servant. Since I'm a teacher, rather a writer first of all, I decided to choose the journalistic 6, which are the 6 questions that usually need to be answered in the lead paragraph of a newspaper article. Or we also call this the 5 W's and the 1 H. And I think you're already saying that there. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. And since I tend to be a bit also of an OC, and like things to be structured, so I decided to do it that way instead of the usual 3-point or 1-point outline. And being a teacher, I wanted to make it as simple. I'll try to do this as simple as possible, because when we talk about servanthood, there's so much to talk about servanthood in the Bible. So this is called the journalistic 6 of servanthood. And before we start, I'd like us to read the passage. We'll do this interactively. When it says all, that means all of you. And my special actors here. The women will be the married women, okay? The ladies will be all the single ladies. Then back to the women. So that includes even the red part. I did the red part just to emphasize. And then Martha, please, will you do the honors? We have our Martha here. And then the men, your only line, the only line you have. And then finally, Jesus will do. Can we have some mics? Okay. So let us all stand up. Let us all stand up, and then please give them a mic. Okay, everybody now? Now, as they
went on the way, Jesus entered the village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. Martha was distracted with much serving, and she went up to him and said,
Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me.
But the Lord answered her,
Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her.
Thank you very much. The Lord bless the reading of the scripture. Let's sit down. Now, usually when we talk about servanthood and we talk about this passage, Martha is seen as the bad guy, right? But in fairness to Martha, I'd like to point out that she did have some good qualities. When we talk about people in general, we have both, right? We have some good qualities, we also have some not so good. But I'd like to point out first what she did right. First of all, she welcomed him into her house. If you notice, she was the one who actually welcomed Jesus into her house. And I like to think that she has the heart to be hospitable. There is that desire to be hospitable, to welcome people into her house, and especially Jesus. We find this in verse 38. And I was just thinking about Martha, and I remembered also the story about how when Lazarus died and Jesus came, remember who it was who ran even along the way to meet Jesus? Who was it? Was it Mary? It was Martha. Luke 11:20 says, so when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him. She didn't wait for him to come to the house, but she went and met him. But listen, but Mary remained seated in the house. And I even have a note here. A couple of months ago when I read this, I said, Martha was an action person, Mary more passive, seated. She was the listener. So there's some consistency here. She also was involved in preparation. And that's a good thing. Mothers can identify with that. We like to have everything in order. And she was very industrious, so we can see that her heart to work, to have service. But then we go to what Jesus saw in her. Where did she go wrong? She was distracted with much serving. We could be so busy that we miss the point. She was anxious and troubled about many things, it says in 41b. In Tagalog, what do we say? Anxious or Nababalisa, tama ba yan? Okay? So distracted, worried, and so much so that she lacked focus. When you are looking at many things, it's hard to focus on everything. There's such thing as what we call multitasking, and young people are said to be good multitaskers. But the truth is, you cannot truly multitask. What you do is shift tasking. We only have a pair of eyes, a pair of ears, and thankfully one mouth. So our eyes cannot go in several directions. It just goes in one direction. Although you can hear many things, but there's a tendency to tune in on only one thing. So when you say you're multitasking, actually you just switch from one thing to another and then go back and forth. And sometimes in the end, because of the lack of focus, you don't get anything done. Then she had the wrong priority. Yes, it's good to be doing so many things, like in the house, even in ministry, doing things for the Lord, but then sometimes we have a wrong priority. And I saw that she has wrong attitudes. She was attention-seeking. She went up to him. Nagpapansin talaga, no? She went up to him, like saying something maybe like, look at me, no? Pity me, party. She said, my sister has left me to serve alone. Kawawa naman ako. Poor me. So she felt sorry for herself. She wanted also others to feel sorry for herself. She was discontented. There was discontentment. We could see that Mary was contented to sit, but she was there, twirling, spinning. She was not contented. And I think I noted a bit of holier-than-thou attitude. It's like, okay, she's just sitting there, and look at me here, I'm doing all this stuff. In ministry, sometimes we could be like that, comparing and saying, oh, they're just doing that, but look at me. I'm better. So she was into a comparison trap. Very dangerous thing. When we're in a comparison trap, we either think we're better than others or that they're better than us, and then we go back to the pity me, poor me. I believe she was also having a judging attitude. She said, do you not care? Although it was in a form of question, but still, no, there was a hint of, I think you don't care. I think you don't care. That's why you let Mary do this, just sit, and leave me doing all these things. And then bossy. Tell her then. Imagine telling God, telling Jesus, do you not care? Tell her then. So at least she was judging because she assumed that Jesus did not care. But then she said, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Tell her then to do what I'm doing. I think she was an eldest, not being a bossy kind of person. And palaban. Palaban. She wanted Jesus to fight for her. She wanted to have Jesus say, no, okay, look at Martha. She's doing the right thing. Mary, you should also do what she's doing. Oh, I already said discontentment. Doing for Jesus is fine. It's needed. It's important. It's good, but there's something better. And we see that Mary is indeed a true servant. She was focused only on Jesus. Her eyes, her ears, her whole attention only on him. When you are seated, all you could do is look up, right? Somebody sit in a chair, let's say. By the way, I have a chair there. This is not the 4 chairs yet. This is actually the 17 chairs. Okay? Somebody seated and you sit at their feet, you don't just look at their knees. You look up at their face. So we can see her focus was only on Jesus. And in doing so, she was able to listen to his teaching, and she did, as Jesus said, the one thing, the only thing that was necessary. That is to worship Jesus, which is true service. She had, I believe, the right attitude, the right heart. First of all, she was humble. The position, body position, is important. If we read the Bible, we can see that how important the position is in worship of God. And we can see the fact that she was sitting at his feet. It's a sign of humility. And as I said, because when you're seated, all you can do is look up. But we have a term, looking down at someone. It's because you feel you're superior, so you literally look down at somebody. Here she was looking up. There's a heart also of humility. She was contented where she was. Okay lang, I'm here. I don't have to be twirling like my sister. I don't have to be spinning around doing so much just to get Jesus' attention or just to please him. All I have to do is just sit at his feet. And she didn't defend. You notice that? She didn't defend or fight for herself. She could have said, but Jesus said it's okay. I can do this. Jesus has been teaching that all we have to do is listen to him and worship him. She didn't fight. And she didn't brag either. Di ba, minsan, with siblings, there's a tendency to do that. You not only fight, but when you're proven to be the right person, yeah, I'm the one. Look at me, I am the one who's doing it right. There was nothing like that in her attitude. And she was patient. You notice that after Jesus pointed this out, there was just silence. We can see that she was just waiting patiently. She indeed had the heart of worship. This is the true heart of worship. Therefore, being with Jesus is the best. Doing is good, but being is not only better, it is also the best. Now, what is a servant? Some words in the Bible, the original language, ebed is servant in Hebrew. So when we hear the word servant or read the word servant, that's the Hebrew. And for the Greek, there are two. One is diakonos, which is a servant or a minister, and the other is doulos. We often use this, which literally means a bond slave. It's implying a greater or less degree of inferiority and want of freedom. You have no freedom, and here you are inferior to the one you're serving. A slave, a hired workman, or a hired servant. It could also mean attendant in the service of someone, or a minister. Now, sometimes we think of minister like, wow, minister up there, minister of defense, minister of that. But actually, that person is a servant. And it's a term of respectful self-depreciation referring to oneself. King James Version, you hear thy servant, right? Or thy handmaiden, or your servant. It's used in place of I or me. So instead of referring to yourself, I or me, you say thy servant or your servant. Or if you're a woman, you say your handmaiden. It's said in the presence of superiors. So if you're the servant, you would not refer to yourself as I. You would say you're humble. In fact, sometimes say you're humble servant, right? In addressing the supreme being. So when you hear of people, especially in the Old Testament, they refer to God and they say, your servant is here, your servant is ready, your servant is listening. It's also officials of every grade. Servants of kings, servants of princes, etc. And even now in our modern age, we hear the term for politicians, public servants, right? Okay, that's what they're supposed to be, but some are not. Very rich servants, some of them. It's a position of a king in relation to his people. So a king, although he's up there, supposedly superior, he also refers to himself as a servant, serving his people. And it is one who is distinguished as obedient and faithful to God or Christ. And this is what we often use. I put an X there because another meaning of servant is one who is enslaved by sin. We don't want to use that, okay, but that's another term in the Bible. So what is a servant based on all those things that we have said? It's to minister, to attend to the needs of others. It is to give up our rights, even our freedom as bond slaves. It is to be humble or having humility. It is to be obedient and faithful to God and Christ. It is to sit at Jesus' feet, to listen to him, to learn from him, worship him, and serve him. That is the essence of servanthood. Why? We're done with the what. So why serve? Let's start with some biblical examples. In the Old Testament, we have Moses, and Jesus himself says, Moses, who is my servant, or in the narration, Moses, the servant of the Lord. So this is both found in Joshua. And then we have David, who refers to himself, says, deal with your servant. I am your servant. Now, as we know, Moses and David are the greats, right, in the Old Testament, but they referred to themselves as servants. They were servants of God. And in the New Testament, the writers of the books, James, Peter, John, and Paul, also refer to themselves, even in the introduction, the first line, they say James or Peter, Paul, a servant of Christ. Paul also gives some admonitions or says that if we were trying to please men, I would not be a servant. In other words, he would rather please God. He says that I serve the Lord with great humility and tears and trials. Now, if you say that today, I serve the Lord with great humility, parang, okay, you have to, di ba sabi, when you say that you're humble, you know you're not, right? And sometimes you think, okay, Paul, right, you're humble. But actually, he's saying this with all sincerity. He's just showing that, look, I have served the Lord, I'm serving the Lord. Great humility, even with tears and trials, you do the same. Because he's the one who said, follow me as I follow Christ. He says, we ourselves as your servants, we're doing it not for the people, but for Jesus Christ's sake. And I just want to add this because we need to have a woman there. He called Phoebe a servant. She was a servant of the church at Cenchrea. Then we have also Jesus as a suffering servant. In the Old Testament, there are some passages there in Isaiah which were called the servant songs, and there are 4 of them. The first is in 42. Here he is seen as a king who will bring justice. Remember a while ago we said that a king is also a servant, so he's a king, and his task is to bring justice. And then in chapter 49 here, he's a prophet who is equipped and called to restore the nations to God. At first, it was said that he will bring Jacob or Israel back to God, but then God expands it and said, no, all nations. I want all nations to come to me. And then in chapter 50, he is a teacher, both a teacher and a learner who follows the path God places on him. And then in 52 to 53, this is the popular one where it's referred to, or Jesus referred to as a man of sorrows. And we can see here how he is prophesied as the Messiah. All the sad things or the sorrowful or all the bad things that would happen to him. Jesus' example could also be seen like in the New Testament, where he said, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve. So he knows his task is not just to be served because people were serving him, but actually he came to serve. And then also, we know that even if he was God himself, he existed in the form of God, but he took the form not only of a servant, of a minister, of an attendant, but of a bond slave. A bond slave, as he said, has no freedom, has no rights. In fact, if you wanted, as a person, to voluntarily be a bond slave, you were a servant of somebody, but you want this person to be your master for life, you would, yung mga earrings natin, you would go the doorpost, and then he would pierce your ear, and you are then a bond servant. So those with earrings, you're serving somebody. A servant is not greater than a master. He had to say this after he washed the disciples' feet. We can see that many verses in the New Testament where the disciples were jockeying up for position. They were humble people to start with, but then later on they realized, hey, look at us, we were chosen. We're so special. And as usual, human nature sets in and they're trying to see, okay, who's going to be president, vice president, and all this. And everybody, of course, wanted to be the top dog. They want to be the leader. But Jesus reminded them again and again, the greatest, if you want to be the greatest, you have to be the lowest. You have to be a literal servant. And that's why he washed their feet, and he says, a servant is not greater than the master. I washed your feet, I'm the master. You also have to do the same. We can see also biblical commands. And of course, besides what we said a while ago about Jesus, his teachings, he said, whoever serves me must follow me. You say you're my servant, you have to obey what I say. In the Old Testament, it says, obedience is better than what? Than sacrifice. You give so much, you think you're doing so much, but are you obeying me? Are you following what I say? And he also said, love God with all your strength. If you think about strength, it denotes service. I only want to love God with my heart. You know, I'm such a feeler person. I have so much love to share. I want to love God only with my mind. And I'm such an intellectual person. With my strength, oh, that's somebody else's service. You know, they're hospitable. They have a gift of service. That's not my gift. But we also need to serve God with our strength. Paul's writing says many. He says, do not be slothful in zeal, but fervent in spirit. Serve the Lord. Huwag yung papatay-patay, no? Be zealous, be fervent. Be subject to governing authorities who are God's servants. They're God's servants. We also need to follow them. Work heartily as unto the Lord because you are serving Him. That's our motive. And through love, serve one another. It's possible to serve others minus the love, right? And then it becomes an obligation. That's all it is. Rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man. Yes, we're serving other people, but we're doing it not just for them, but ultimately for the Lord. Many times, we can have the feeling like, you know, I'm doing so much and I don't get anything in return, or I'm doing so much and nobody seems to notice. I'm doing all this, you know. Here again, hey, look at me. Hey, pity me. But if we turn our focus to God and think that we're not doing it just for people, we're doing it ultimately for God, then it doesn't matter if nobody notices. As a writer, you know, we're very concerned about our byline. If we have an article, our name should be there. That's the kind of artistic, should we call it, pride that we have. And sometimes, this kind of attitude comes in when we do so much and we want to receive the credit. Especially when the credits are said, no, thank you, acknowledging this and that, and all of a sudden, why wasn't I acknowledged? I did this. But I came across a quote, and I said, yeah, it makes sense. It says there, it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as the job gets done. In ministry, it doesn't matter who gets the credit as long as the ministry, the job gets done. Because after all, it's for the Lord. And here, the Lord's servants must not be quarrelsome, but kind, ouch, to everyone, patiently enduring evil. It's easy to be kind to those who are kind to you. But those who are also quarrelsome, endure evil, I don't think so, Lord. Can I skip that? It's too hard to do. I'd rather serve those who are kind to me. It's so hard to serve somebody, you know, who thinks they are better than me, or worse, who actually says they're better than me or who are evil. And there are some others. It says, their younger ones, be subject to elders, and all of us to be humble to one another. In other words, mutual submission and mutual service. Whom shall we serve? Of course, as people, we serve God. That's a priority. As Christians, we serve each other. Again, as people of a nation, we serve governing authorities. Younger ones, ito yung mga elders, ano? Younger ones to serve the elders. But of course, there's mutual submission. Then spouses to serve each other. And children, your parents. Okay. Why does it say for parents to serve their children? Because it's natural for us to do that. You don't have to tell us. Just like, why were the husbands told to love their wives and not the wives told to love their husbands? Because for wives, you know, we're feelers. Love comes naturally. We are relational people. So don't worry, children. We will still serve you. You're welcome. How will we serve? How will we then serve? Willingly. Not grudgingly. Walang pilitan. I like this quote in Pearl Harbor where it says there's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer, right? There's nothing stronger than the heart of a volunteer. I was watching 300, Rise of an Empire, skipping the bloody scenes there. This is terrible. And I noticed that the slaves, the slave who is manning the Persian ships, they were shackled, they were whipped. They were doing it because they were literally scared for their own life. But then, focus on the people the volunteers of Themistocles, in their ships, they were not shackled, they were free, and they had their eyes only on the admiral, on, ang hirap sabihin ng pangalan niya, Themistocles. All their eyes were just on him, just waiting for him to say the word go. Because they were fighting for someone or something beyond themselves. That's a difference between somebody who is willing and somebody who was just forced. Another one is, don't ever question the value of volunteers. Remember that Noah's Ark was built by volunteers, Noah and his immediate family, or his family, and the Titanic was built by professionals. Enough said. Serve obediently, not only willingly, but obediently. Serve lovingly and amiably. I'm getting all this, by the way, from the past verses we have gone through. Serve kindly. Serve patiently. Also serve humbly. You might think, well, doesn't it come naturally to serve? You're serving, so serve humbly. Have you ever been in a restaurant where you have so many demands because things were not just right, and finally the waitress comes and goes, plonk, with your plate. Okay, thank you, service with a smile. That person was not being humble. Serve zealously, fervently, heartily. When you talk about volunteers, you can see this, not because they're doing it because they want to, voluntarily, out of their hearts, you can see the joy they have in serving, rather than somebody who is forced to serve. You can see that they're dragging their feet, nakasimangot, they're frowning. Serve also wholeheartedly. Wag yung kalahati, no? Half of your heart wants to do something else, or is focused on another thing, and half is only involved in your service. With our whole heart, serving others, serving the Lord. Serve joyfully and gladly. And as unto the Lord. This is why we're serving Him. And last of all, blessing and praising the Lord. Serve, blessing, and praising the Lord. When and where will we serve? First, when? Anytime. Whenever God calls you, serve. If you remember the story of the great banquet, the parable, where the master said to his servant, okay, call people to come to my banquet that I have prepared. And they had excuses. I cannot come to the banquet. One said, I bought a field. And I think this represents possessions. No, I have this to attend to. One says, I just bought 5 yoke of oxen. So this is his job, this is vocation. I want to try out this oxen. As if you don't, you could do it tomorrow, try the oxen tomorrow, look at the field, excited much. No, I want to do this. Another said, I just got married. Okay, maybe you could understand this person. I just got married. So this has to do with relationships. And these 3 things, possessions, vocations, relationships, many times, these are the things that keep us from following the Lord. Sorry, Lord, I can't leave, I have so many lands. Wow. I have so many things that I don't want to give up. If I become a missionary, I have to leave all my bags, my shoes. I have to leave all my gadgets. Walang signal dun, Lord. Or I can't go there because, I have worked so hard for this job. It's such a good paying job. I can't just up and leave and do something else. Or, Lord, hindi pwede. We've been together. This is my forever, Lord. How can I break up with her? She'll become a Christian someday, maybe in heaven. So we're not free to follow whenever God calls us, because we have all these excuses keeping us from following Him. Compare this with military draftees. As soon as their draft papers come, what do? Did the government call back after a year because, I bought this, I'm in this job, I cannot just quit, or I just got married. Even if is there a rule somehow about those who just got married? I don't know about now, but before, we see movies, World War II, they just got married, and then all of a sudden they have to leave, and then something happened, so sad. But no, they have to drop everything and go and follow. And this is just an earthly master. how much more for our Heavenly Master? Where will we serve? Anywhere. Wherever God calls us to be or to go. I like the song, I'll go where you want me to go, dear Lord. After this was those of us from that generation know that song. It's a hymn. And I remember at Ebenezer, every time they sing this song, and then there's an altar call. And as a pastor's kid, I'm immune to altar calls. Or I think I am. Parang, okay, there's another altar call. Sige, go, go, go. So that when I'm the one that's convicted, God's calling me or God's speaking to me to go up, I said, no, Lord, kakaya ba? It's so cliche, go up, PK, syempre expected, you're a good kid now. And I remember at one point, I was at the back seat, wala pa si Pastor Jun yata at that time. Talk about relationships. I was at the back row, and I remember putting my feet up against the pew before me because I was literally saying no. I was hanging on. I didn't want to let go of my seat because no, Lord, I don't want. And I was already in Bible school that time. I forgot the exact issue or what God wanted to do, but I was fighting, literally fighting against God, and I said no. In the end, how can you fight against God? So I did go forward. We have a joke. In Bible school, we say, wherever He leads, I will follow. Whatever He feeds, I will swallow. That's how willing we have to be. When my father was the president of the Alliance World Fellowships, I had to go to the different, I think around 60 countries. And of course, not all countries were like Paris or Europe or, Australia, good food. Sometimes he went to Vanuatu or other places where's that? Cote d'Ivoire. I never heard of those places. And he said, he would testify and say, praise the Lord that God gave me a missionary stomach. Because I can eat anything. Walang pili. And so literally that, we go wherever God leads us. And whatever is there, eat it. Swallow it, whatever you're fed, whatever the condition. I can't sleep here. I can't eat that. Ooh, yuck. Whatever, wherever God leads us. And then, bloom where you're planted. God maybe has placed you there in that certain ministry to serve. You might be there. You might be willing, but deep inside you're saying, but it's so hard. Youth ministry, some people, it's extreme views of youth ministry. Some people want to be in youth ministry because they think, wow, this is so easy. Games, fun, retreat, food. Wow, I love this. Some people don't want to go into youth ministry because they think it's so hard, dealing with young people, with all their angst, with all their problems. You're there 24/7. They call you. Wee hours of the night, problem. Get me out of jail. It's not even Monopoly. Do this for me and that. You're constantly there for them. It could be tiring. And you think, yes, I'm here because you want me, but then you don't flourish because you don't enjoy. You're not there gladly serving the Lord. Wherever God places you, bloom where you're planted. Because as Oswald Chambers says, of course this is extreme, we must never choose the scene of our own martyrdom. You cannot say, I want to die this way. Yung dapat yung don't mess with my face. I want it to still be like this, poise pa rin. You can say, place me, Lord, in this wonderful place. I want to be there. I'll go wherever you lead me as long as it's in Europe. I used to joke because as a 10-year-old growing up, I really wanted to be a missionary. My husband knows this. They would joke na he has to be a missionary's husband because I'm the missionary. And I would joke, people ask, so where do you want to go as a missionary? I say, well, I think I'll settle with Paris. Pwede na. Okay? Choosing your own dream. It's not actually a sacrifice. It's a dream vacation or dream destination. Don't choose. Don't choose. Let God choose for you. And the thing is, we think that when we choose, wow, this is the best for me. But God has something that's better than our best. Isaiah even calls our efforts and everything as filthy rags. I have a poem that I wrote entitled, Thy Will, O Lord, Not Mine. And it showed that actually that was a time where I was choosing the relationship. And I thought I had the best. And God says, those are filthy rags. I have someone, better. tayo napunta doon? Wherever, anywhere. Wag bawiin, Pastor. Wag bawiin. It says in Isaiah, even Jeremiah, and even all the way to Romans, it says that He is the potter and we are the clay. The clay doesn't choose, please make me beautiful. I want to have gems on me. Please put me in this exquisite, shop where all the rich tourists come by. We cannot choose because we are merely the clay. And what are the consequences of not being God's servant? I just want to focus on being God's servant here. In the Old Testament, the consequence of not serving God, and as you know, sometimes in the Old Testament, some things there could be very extreme. Okay, you don't want to serve me? You will serve your enemies then. He will put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Compare this with, in the New Testament, Jesus says, my yoke is easy. My burden is light. Choose. Who do you want to serve? Somebody who put a yoke of iron on you and destroy you? Or still a yoke, but it is easy and light? Sometimes we think, serve God, ang hirap. Ang hirap. But actually, it is easy and light because He is there with us. We don't serve Him on our own strength and power. He is there giving us the strength, power, and wisdom and patience that we need. Why am I low, Bab? And then also in the New Testament, now focusing our service on God alone. It says there, no one, we know this, no one can serve two masters. We will either hate one and love the other, be devoted to one and despise the other. You can't have both. You need to choose. And we are made to serve. Like it or not, we are made to serve. Of course, the famous Joshua is choose this day whom you will serve. We have to serve somebody. Who will it be? I'd like to read this poem in conclusion. This poem. Okay, they're messing with us. Happy New... Gusto niya kasi pansinin niyo siya. Happy New. Pansinin natin. Okay, yan. Look at me, sabi niya. Okay. A servant's heart. And I highlighted in red the things that were also mentioned in this sermon. A servant's heart chooses each day to give, not knowing this may be its last day to live. A servant's heart doesn't stop to ask, will this be for me? A great or small task? A servant heart does willingly all things, for it's pleased to see all the blessings it brings. A servant's heart is glad and rejoices because it's found the key in making the right choices. A servant's heart knows how to love. It gives all the glory to God, the Father above. At the end of life as we know it here on earth, may our reward be to hear our Lord and Master say, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Master. God bless us all, servants of the Lord.